According to Forbes, Americans spent more than 1,300 hours on social media last year alone. The total number of minutes people spend on social media has increased by more than 150% in the last decade, and the average attention span of humans has gone from what was 12 seconds in the year 2000 down to a mere 8 seconds in the year 2022, which is 1 second lower than the average attention span of a goldfish. Short form content like TikTok has started to take off, and in some countries like the UK, TikTok's growth is outpacing that of YouTube's. And in the United States, TikTok and YouTube are neck and neck, making TikTok a sudden emerging competitor to entertainment platforms like YouTube. So the question I'm wondering is, why are more people gravitating towards content? And what if this is just the start of a transformation in the way humans communicate? With new inventions like Elon Musk's Neuralink, combined with someone like Elon Musk's interest in social media platforms like Twitter, I had an interesting thought that we'll be talking about in today's video, which is, what if social media is training us for a future with neural networks? And how would one prepare? Neural networks. The human brain has somewhere in the ballpark of 86 billion neurons, which are really what make up what is called a neural network in the human brain. To be specific, a neural network is a network or a circuit of biological neurons, or in a modern sense, an artificial neural network composed of artificial neurons or nodes. So a neural network is either a biological neural network, which is basically our brains, made up of biological neurons, those 86 billion neurons, or it's an artificial network, which has most commonly been created to solve artificial intelligence problems, which is what we know as AI. And the reason I'm sharing this background with you is there's biological neural networks, but there's also now artificial neural networks, which are seemingly trying to create the same level of intelligence that a human brain is able to compute and process. And also interestingly, the way that us humans communicate with artificial intelligence today, or neural networks today, is we use computers, which, we type away on our computer and on the keyboard and send information to the cloud, which is interfacing with some sort of warehouse that might have computers, using artificial intelligence software to help access this sense of intelligence remotely from where we currently are. What's happening in this process is we're accessing an intelligence that has been artificially created by man. And we do it by using a physical interface like our computer or our phone. And the way that we're able to communicate is by typing with our fingers. The reason I'm sharing this with you is that typing away on our phones or on our keyboards, it's actually becoming one of the bottlenecks in the way that we communicate either amongst other humans or with technology, which is really important for the groundwork of this video. So the question, if we're thinking about how do we speed up communication amongst humans or amongst technology, is what if we were to eliminate this bottleneck altogether using our hands to type away? Well, that's where a brain-machine interface would come into play, also known as a BMI. An example of a brain-machine interface is a product like Neuralink, where basically they're figuring out ways to allow humans to use their brains to send communication information. Right now, Neuralink is starting off with products that will serve people with severe medical challenges like spinal injuries, but eventually a product like Neuralink could be used on a common basis and across a broad population of people just for communication in the everyday. Things like typing away on keyboards will go away because there will be a much faster way to send and transmit information from our brain into the computer using a sensor that goes into our brain or on the outside of our brain to actually read what we're thinking and therefore send the message. Kind of like you see here in this video, which I pulled from Neuralink's website, where they're actually showing someone typing using just their brain. And so at some point in society, there will be a time where people are not using their phones or their screens. They're going to be just using their brain to communicate with other computers. And those computers probably won't even be right here with us, other than the fact that we might have some relays to send information, and instead we'll all be communicating together or with computers using wireless technology. Which brings me back to this whole concept of Elon Musk's fascination in Twitter. Because if you combine Neuralink and Twitter, it seems to be a perfect roadmap for someone helping support a new social media platform where communication is so much more fast and instantaneous than the way social media platforms are today. The rise of social media. For a long time, the way that humans were able to communicate information through the media was done with written paper. And it wasn't until the 1920s when technology like the radio was released and started to be adopted by society. Then very quickly afterwards in the 1940s, television news started to take off. And then what started this whole social media craze is in 1997, the internet was created, allowing humans to basically be their own media channel, sharing information whenever they want, however they want, and with whomever they want. And basically this whole trend is bringing society from what was a slower, more archaic way of transmitting and sharing information together in a society to what is now the most efficient way of human-to-human communication to date. In fact, most Americans today now get their news from mobile devices like a smartphone or a tablet, whereas television, radio, and print publications are lagging behind in popularity, interestingly in correlation to how long they've been around. So the latest and greatest is much more commonly used now to get news versus what is the oldest technology of communication, which is the print publication format. Another statistic is that more than half of US adults, 53% to be specific, say they regularly or periodically get their news from social media. Social platforms rank among the main news sources for most Americans, and only 21% say they've never relied on social media to stay informed. And my argument for why this is important is basically humans have already created some sort of a network to communicate information where we're using different social media platforms to share the latest and greatest because it's faster and it's more personalized, and we get custom tailored information specific to us and our interests pretty much instantaneously. As soon as someone posts something, we may be able to see it within minutes, versus before when you'd have to get news in the early 1900s, you'd have to wait for someone to print something on a newspaper, the printer to complete the printing, and then for that printed newspaper to be distributed, which could take up to a week in some cases, depending on where you live. Compare that to the world we're in today, where people have their smartphone at their fingertips, ready to share information whenever they want and with whoever they want. We now live in an era where information is communicated so much faster than ever before in the history of humanity. But obviously on this channel, we're not just talking about what things are looking like today, we're looking at what they're going to look like in the future. So what does this have to do with the future of social media and communication? Well, research has demonstrated that most people think at about 600 words per minute or greater, but speak at only about 150 to 200 words per minute. This is according to Richard L. Weaver II. So when it comes to a platform like TikTok, and we're seeing TikTok take off in the UK, in the United States, and worldwide, it makes you wonder if short form content has anything to do with relieving this bottleneck in the way that humans communicate together. In fact, I think that if you really want to take a big picture view of what social media is doing, it's satisfying this innate human need of being able to communicate with our friends and our family, or even random strangers on the internet who have similar interests with us, and do that so much more effectively. And I think over periods of time, we're going to see humans crack the code and come up with new technologies that allow us to communicate so much more effectively than we've ever been able to in the past. Which is exactly where a technology like Neuralink would come into the picture. And just envision with me for a second an idea where we as humans are able to communicate and send information from our thoughts basically to each other and to AI, which has its own neural network and is able to help compute and process information for us. Well, it gets pretty crazy pretty quickly, because then we're basically able to communicate with thought, both with other humans and with AI, which creates this sense of collective consciousness that a lot of people talk about. And in some cases, people see it as this very woo-woo thing. But in a technological perspective, that's going to become a very real reality when humans are able to communicate using a chip that might wirelessly detect what their brain is thinking and be able to send that information to other people or to other computers. So I think it's very clear that this is a path that we're on. It may not be in the next 5 years, but it could be in the next 10 years. It could be in the next 50 years. Either way, some might be concerned to hear this, because it starts to make you wonder, how do I prepare for a world where basically we communicate with our thoughts instead of with our mouths or with our hands by typing away on Twitter? Well, if you're concerned at all about this concept of technology changing the way that your life is day to day, trust me, I'm here with you. In fact, I started to notice this over the last couple of years, how things have seemingly sped up. New technologies have come about. AI is starting to become a lot more widely adopted every single day. And the reality is that we're in an exponential era, and things are starting to change much more faster, which is causing a lot of people to get confused and worried about the future. Well, that's exactly what this channel is about, and I'm here to explore new technologies and how they impact the future of health, relationships, and business, and so much more. So my advice in terms of preparing for a world where we have a collective consciousness and we're basically one massive neural network of brains and artificial intelligence communicating together, my main advice is to learn how to use technology to your advantage. There's this thinking out there that technology takes people's jobs and has a negative impact on society. But if you were to think about how the average person lives today versus someone living in the 1600s, the average person today can pretty much live what was considered the life of a king or queen back in the 1600s. Grocery delivery, pretty much any food that you want, information at your fingertips, which is basically the equivalent of having a personal assistant in your own personal library. The list goes on, into entertainment galore using YouTube or Netflix for a very low cost. So my argument is that technology makes life better, and we need to learn how to use technology to our advantage, which means that we need to have a strong technical quotient, lots of adaptability to be able to change and pivot when new technologies come and go. And then we need to have the right mental models and frameworks for thinking about operating in a world where technology is changing faster and faster. And lastly, I think it's important to develop a form of leadership, because really we're navigating the unknown. There's nobody who knows how this stuff is going to come and play, but it takes leaders to help pave that path and help make sense of our new realities that are going to start arriving at a faster and faster pace. So I hope you enjoyed exploring this topic with me. And if you're geeking out about this stuff like I am, I did want to invite you to our Tech Powered Leaders community, which is currently hosted in Slack. I would love to engage with you there and talk about some of these concepts that are going to shape the future. Whether you're in business or have a profession that requires you to think about the future, or you're just somebody who's curious about this stuff, I would encourage you to join the community so you can get around like-minded people like myself, and we can brainstorm new ideas and concepts together. Right now, it's free to join, but at some point I may start to have some sort of a monthly fee just to keep the group exclusive and filled with the right kinds of people. So if you're interested in this community, please make sure to check the link in the description below where you can join via Slack. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.